All right, shall we begin?
Yeah, let's do it.
Shall we begin and shall we end the Cardinals season? Possibly. Hey, welcome to...
Hell yeah.
Welcome to Away Games, if you can guess it by the clear bias already, a Chicago Cubs podcast. I'm one of the two New York City comedians who host this. My name's Kevin McCaffrey, and that's Adam Mamawala.
Hey.
What's up?
There I am.
Here, I did say we're ending. I used the word "we" in terms of ending the Cardinals season early, which the Cardinals being down 3-0 as we speak, to me in no way means they won't come back and win this, become the second team ever to do that. Yeah. But we're not ending anything. We wouldn't even if the Cubs were doing it because we're not on the Cubs. But the Nationals, man, they look fun right now.
They look amazing, but I'll tell you what, Kevin, what cup am I drinking from right now?
You're drinking from it appears to be it says World Champion Cubs, and the numbers on either side appear to say 20 and 16. So you're drinking from a 2016 Chicago Cubs World Series Champion cup.
So you're saying that you're all right with trading Gleyber Torres?
I am all right with trading Gleyber Torres, and I almost feel like now, follow us, by the way, on Twitter, as we've talked about this a little bit, at Away Games Pod.
We're going to jump all over the place. Just ride with it.
Yeah, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Away Games Pod. Email us at awaygamespodcast@gmail.com. Yeah, I almost feel like I'm being pranked now with people talking about Gleyber, but... It's not one of those fake controversies where sometimes you'll see online people get mad about something and no one's actually arguing the side that they're mad at. You know, it's a straw man stuff. There are people who still talk shit about the Cubs trading Gleyber for Aroldis that year. And as we said at the time, as we've said many times, we did not like trading for Aroldis at the time. But the Cubs won the championship that year. Aroldis did play a part in that. Gleyber did not.
Right.
And they won. So
yeah, well, a couple things. First of all, gotta love the matchup of just quality guy closers in Chapman and Osuna. It's really been a treat.
That is, I didn't consider that, but it is really the elite of the elite when it comes to pieces of shit who throw hard in games.
Yeah, not great.
Yeah.
But we made this point on Twitter, and I completely stand by it. And I actually asked a Mets friend of mine as well. You know, if you're the Dodgers and now you've won 7 straight, they're basically the Braves of this generation. Like
Absolutely.
They keep winning the division every year, and they can't win a World Series, and lost in pretty dramatic and heartbreaking fashion, which we will get to. But if you ask them, any Dodgers fan, would you have traded Cody Bellinger, even knowing he would be this good in 2013, if it meant winning a title that year? I can bet you that 99%, if not 100%, would say yes. And I asked my friend Adam, who's a huge Mets fan, knowing what you know about Pete Alonso, would you have been fine with the Mets having traded him in 2015 if it meant that got them over the hump and they won the World Series that year? And he was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a thing where Gleyber's power output helped very much by the Gleyber's really good. So he's really good. That's great. Would be great to have him. His power output has been helped by the juice ball, by Yankee Stadium in general, and this year by the Orioles, against whom I believe he hit 13 of his homers against just one of the worst teams to exist in modern baseball history, the Orioles and the Tigers this year. So Gleyber, no one saw this kind of power output for him, even when you were predicting that, he's a prospect I really believe in. So I think he's ended up even better than we thought at the time. And yeah, the Bellinger comp is a good one, and Bellinger's, better than Gleyber is even. But Dodgers fans would still make that deal. Really, and it's more comparable, I think, to if the Dodgers traded Gavin Lux this year, who's a very top-end middle infield prospect. We don't know what he's going to be, but one of the best hitting prospects in the minors, and that's basically what Gleyber was at that time. He's a middle infield prospect, very highly thought of, but you don't know what they're going to be. And as you said, yeah, the difference between what the Cubs front office did and what the Dodgers have done is the Dodgers have never gone fully all in on 1 year. They've been very conservative about trading their minor leaguers, and that's worked to some degree. But I
guess the closest they've gone to going all in was trading for Darvish.
Yeah, that's probably right, because they traded Willie Calhoun, right? Who's like a little fire hydrant of a guy who doesn't play defense but can hit very well. Yeah, and they right. It's basically the philosophical difference when Theo at the time even said, if we're not going to go all in, or if we're ever going to go all in, like when else would we do it besides this year?
Right, and I think that's an important point. Is that yes, of course, if the Cubs hadn't won in 2016, it would be that much more annoying to have to watch Gleyber Torres be amazing for the Yankees when you and I live in New York. But it still wouldn't have been the wrong move.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because the thing that matters is winning the championship that year. Mm-hmm. That's what matters. I mean, it's good to stay good and cycle through forever without ever having to do a full teardown like the Cubs and Astros both did and did well. A lot of other teams have tried to do the full teardown and haven't gotten the second part of it right.
Right.
But yeah, there is. I am very much on board with you. You basically want a really strong and deep farm system for two reasons: one, so those guys end up being stars for your team, and two, so they end up being pieces you can trade for people who are stars. Mm-hmm. And that the Cubs they signed the two best international free agents that year in Eloy and Gleyber. It sucks to not see them reach their potential with the Cubs, but we traded them for pieces to try to win the year. And I'm fine with cycling through that to some degree year to year. Right.
And obviously Quintana hasn't helped the Cubs to another World Series, but we've said this before, I don't think they end up winning the division that year without trading for him. Just even from a, we have confidence in this group standpoint, because when that trade happened, they were, 500 or under 500. I mean, the one thing that I'll say about Gleyber, I feel like I don't know quite as much about Eloy, but it does suck how fun Gleyber seems to be. I wish he were a dick so that I didn't miss his personality, because it would be very fun to have somebody with that kind of energy on the Cubs to join the likes of Baez and other people that kind of play that way.
Yeah, it would have been an excellent, and it seems like him and Eloy, as far as I can tell, both seem to be pretty fun, cool dudes. And
I just wonder where their respect for the game is when they seem to be so clearly enjoying it.
Yeah, exactly. Man, and I guess that swings me a little bit over to the other championship series, too. Obviously, we are predetermined to not like the Cardinals. Obviously, we're Cubs fans. They don't like us. We don't like them. Great. Whatever. But you said, and we both said, that the Cardinals fans we dealt with this year in person in various places, you in Atlanta and us both in St. Louis, the fans were pretty cool that we dealt with. So we've given positive on that side. Is there a more detestable bunch in, they are having huge beef with every team now, where they're pissed about Juan Soto jiggling around after taking pitches. Now, that's something I never noticed, that Juan Soto was demonstrative when he takes a ball, then grabs his balls. Before, I didn't know that was a thing, but now I love it.
It's a little bit like the Kevin Durant shoulder shimmy when he shoots free throws. It's kind of subtle. You have to pay attention to it.
Yeah, exactly. But of course the Cardinals are furious about that. They're doing an impression of what people who hate the Cardinals just assume the Cardinals are, and obviously there's a couple of fun guys on the Cardinals. Dexter's over there, and there's, I'm sure there's others who are fine. I don't think I have a problem with Paul Goldschmidt, but man, Yadi, what an annoying, hypocritical piece of shit Yadi Molina has really turned out to be. And maybe he's been like this the whole time, but I feel like he's really peaking right now,
Yeah, he seems like a real first ballot asshole.
Yeah, real first ballot hypocritical D-bag who's had a major league career that's been good. There you go. He's had a good career, and that's that.
That's an interesting point, though, because I think, just as a whole, I think of Cardinals fans are so annoying. But it is true in our encounters with them in St. Louis, and then when I was in Atlanta, I didn't really have any specific issues. And it's kind of the opposite of the Yankees, where I just hate the Yankees for what they are. I don't really specifically hate many of their players anymore. There are guys that I've really disliked over the years, but this current Yankee bunch, I don't have any particular disdain for. I just don't like the organization and and the evil that they represent.
Right. Exactly. I think when you've won, 20% of the titles that have existed, then it's unless you're a fan of that team, you're going to be built to sort of root against them. But when you look at, as you say, when you look at the Yankees players, I really can't think of anyone besides Chapman who helped bring us a lot of joy, who I have a distinct distaste for. I mean, Tommy Kahnle, I've heard, is an asshole, too. LaTroy Hawkins said he was the worst teammate he ever had. And I know we have our own feelings about LaTroy Hawkins, but LaTroy said that.
But he's a notably good teammate, actually, LaTroy Hawkins. So if he says that, I actually believe it.
Mm-hmm. So I'll bet, I'll assume Tommy Kahnle's a D-bag, and that Aroldis Chapman as well. But the rest of them, it's pretty fun dudes,
Yeah. By the way, I this is kind of interesting. I would have to look at the exact year, but for all of the Yankees' success and all of the Cardinals' success as organizations, they actually haven't faced each other in a World Series since like the 1920s, which is very shocking considering how good they've both been just in general.
That is. Actually, I saw recently that in the last 20 seasons, the Cardinals have made the Final Four 10 times, which is crazy. That's
wild, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess they've lost in the LCS a bunch of times because basically they won the 2 World Series, right? And
13 and 2000, or not 13, I'm sorry, 2011 and 2006.
And they lost to the Red Sox.
Right, in 13.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there was a year that they lost to the Giants in the LCS. Yeah. I think they lost, I'm trying to think of who else maybe the Phillies at one point.
Definitely, yeah.
But it was interesting to me because I was thinking about it. I was like, I guess because that's always my like nightmare scenario is like, please God, let it not be Cardinals Yankees.
Sure.
And at this moment, it looks like it likely will not. As you said, I would not count them out of it. But I have to say, as frustrated as I was watching just the first inning of Game 5 between the Cardinals and Braves, being like, really, Atlanta, is this the best you could do
right.
in a Game 5 at home?
Yeah, the 10-run inning. Yeah.
Yeah, in a way. If the Cardinals, and we're recording this a couple of hours before Game 4, if they really do get swept, especially if they get like shut out today, and just get completely flat out embarrassed in the NLCS, kind of like the Cubs did in 2015, but that's not here nor there. I kind of like it more than if they had lost in the first round.
Right. That they got ahead and were like, I mean, God, a sweep to follow Mike Shilt's speech would be.
Yes.
So great. Like the opposite of the Hayward rain delay. If you just have Schilt going, we're going to fucking fuck him up and I don't fucking care any fucking Cardinals. And then they just shit the bed completely for
Schilt the bed.
Schilt the bed. Excuse me. Thank you. That is a good.
T-shirt idea number 5. Stamp it.
Cardinals Schilt the bed. God dang it, Adam. I am. It is a failure of the merchandise industry that you have not been poached from this podcast to come up with T-shirt ideas. Dang man, that really would be something else. The Nationals, we're looking at it where the Nationals are creeping into like my third favorite team territory because coming back to beat Josh Hader and eliminate the Brewers. Thank you for that. That was helpful from Cubs fan perspective and a person who doesn't like white power relievers. And so that's cool. And then eliminating the Dodgers. As we said, we would have been fine with the Dodgers winning this year.
Right. But I mean, down 3-1 in the 8th inning, facing Hader and then facing Kershaw, and to win those games.
Yeah.
And really to borrow I think the Tim McCarver thing that they did on Family Guy. Basically, the Game 5 of the Washington LA series was as good as bad the other Game 5 was.
Yeah, I think that is a good way, a very good way to put it. It was as good as it was as bad.
I mean, that was and somebody I'm sure you noticed this as well. When Kershaw gave up that home run to Soto, because first of all, the Rendon home run was kind of similar to the one Ozuna hit against the Cubs in that brutal series, where it's like, that's not a bad pitch. It's barely off the ground. He just reached out and kind of like tapped it into left field. The Soto shot was absolutely destroyed. And Kershaw's immediate reaction was exactly the same as when Rizzo hit that home run off him in Game 6, where he like throws it, it's this bomb, and he like squats down on the mound and puts his hands on his head. And I really feel badly for the guy.
I do too. There's almost nothing you could do. You have to, if you're Kershaw, I mean, you just have to feel snake bitten at this point. You've done it when they're just hitting postseason bombs off you when it's not even a bad pitch. I mean, what can you do? And that was a situation where I do think Dave Roberts really mishandled that bullpen too. They have relievers. They actually do have relief pitchers.
Well, and as we saw after Maeda came in, he completely shut the Nats down. So easy to second guess it. Obviously, there's a world where Kershaw doesn't have that happen to him and pitches the final 7 outs, and people are like, "Oh, great, yeah, you save your best pitcher for that moment and you put him out there." But I think we've seen enough that when you put guys in situations that they're not that comfortable in, it doesn't always work out. I mean, it's worked for the Nats with Corbin, but it seems like the Nats can kind of do no wrong at this point, so that doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah, and also Kershaw did come in relief in that way successfully and shut down the Nationals before a couple of years ago when it was.
He did,
So it's like,
and in the 7th inning he got that huge strikeout, and I mean, who knows how it would have played out? Maybe the Nats are just a team of destiny, and they would have come back off of Maeda in a different situation, or Jansen, or whoever it may have been.
Yeah.
But I mean, they really are starting to feel like a team of destiny. I feel.
Yeah, they've been on a hell of a run, and you hope it's not. You hope it's not, as someone who suddenly likes the Nationals, you hope it's not the situation where, like, the Rockies years ago had that dominant run all the way to the end of the season and then
got swept.
Had a few days off and then sort of lost it and then got swept. So we'll see.
I think that's a perfect comp, actually. I've been thinking about that Rockies team, and I've been afraid that the same thing will happen to them.
Right. And you talking about the matchup of the piece of shit closers as human beings, Roberto Osuna and Aroldis Chapman in the AL. And then you go to the NL, and it's kind of a closer by committee with the Nationals, but just seemingly great guys. Sean Doolittle may be my favorite relief pitcher in the world as a guy. He just seems to be an incredible guy. And then the other guy who's been their de facto closer, Daniel Hudson, missed Game 1. He was unavailable for Game 1 because he was there at the birth of his child.
What a selfish prick.
What a selfish prick, according to David Sampson.
To miss a day of work to be there for the birth of your child? What an asshole.
One of the all-time most ratioed tweets by David Sampson, who was formerly the president of the Marlins, hired by Jeffrey Loria, actual criminal, who Jeffrey Loria, I believe, was just married to Sampson's mom, and that's how Sampson ended up getting his start in baseball. So this nepotism motherfucker talking shit about a guy who's there for the birth of his child. And, Sean Doolittle said afterwards, he's like, if you hear that a guy's doing that and your first reaction is that, he should be, why isn't he at the game? Then you're an asshole. Like the Doolittle
I
said.
think it was like if your reaction to somebody being present for the birth of their child is anything other than congratulations, you're an asshole.
Yep, and David Sampson, an asshole and a coward, of course, who also who afterwards was like, I'm not saying it's bad. It's like, you specifically did, you fucking loser. What a D-bag. Who's just like an old dude who's wearing a hoodie in his Twitter avatar that just says college across it. Just like
I mean, to be clear, if I ever have kids, I'm definitely going to still try to hit like an open mic in between contractions, but
yeah, exactly. Just work out. I've got some new stuff about having a baby right now. Yeah. So I think that basically catches us up, right? On what's happening in the non-Cubs baseball.
I mean, the other stuff, and we're going to kind of get into this as well because he's one of the free agents we're going to talk about, is like Garrett Cole and Strasburg are both pitching at another level right now. And I mean, Cole in Game 5 against the Rays looked pretty much untouchable.
Yeah. Almost in a way where it's crazy a guy has this kind of stuff and that the stuff is working that well. Before we get into talking to them, do we want to talk about our sponsor friends?
Oh, sure.
All right, let's check them out. If you've listened to us over the past few weeks, we have our first sponsor friends, and they are our buddies over at Thrive Fantasy.
Yes, they are. And if you weren't clear on what Thrive Fantasy is, it is a new DFS app for prop bets. They've streamlined the drafting process and eliminated the need to do unnecessary hours of research by using only top-tier athletes. So instead of the traditional salary cap format, you build your lineup around a list of prop bets. Each unique prop has an over and under point value assigned to it, and you will be rewarded that point value if that prop is correct. You can use promo code awaygames, all one word, and get a free $10 bonus with your first deposit of $10 or more. We will post the link as always, and once again, use promo code awaygames for a free $10 bonus with your first deposit of $10 or more. And I tell you what, we have the technology to record this ad read and just play it every week. But you know what? I enjoy doing it.
That's true. We do. We could just mail it in. I could just play it like a drop, like a little sound bite.
You know what? Every day is opening day on this goddamn podcast. Nick Castellanos of ad reads.
Yes, Nicholas Castellanos has inspired Adam to live ad read every time. It's opening day. That's the first time. Make it like the first time all the time. Keep it fresh. Use the code AWAYGAMES at Thrive Fantasy for $10 free. It's making a profit before. That's a bet you already won. If you use Away Games, you already won a bet for $10. So
you guys miss it every week because we're not recording yet. But every time I see Kevin, I look at him and I say, Kevin, happy opening day, and he looks at me and goes, ugh.
Yep, I did. That actually, Adam was doing an impression of me there. I know that sounded exactly like me, but that actually wasn't me. That was Adam as me. Yep, yuck.
Hey, speaking of bets, you were in Vegas. Did you bet on anything interesting sports-wise?
Yeah, I basically made one sports bet and I won, and I bet on the Astros on the run line against Tampa in the winner-take-all game. So basically,
what does that mean on the run line?
So basically, point spread. But in baseball, the point spread is always 1.5 runs.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I took the Astros. Could have taken them straight up, would have been a lower payout. So I took them with the minus 1.5. So I needed the Astros to win by 2. They did. So
this was game 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did that at the Westgate Sportsbook, which is, I will say, the best sportsbook in Las Vegas. And it is one that you'll see ESPN use their odds specifically a lot. You'll see the Westgate odds quoted a lot. And a lot of casinos have their own specific odds makers, too. So you can go around and get different odds different places.
Where's that sponsorship?
Yeah, I know. Come on, Westgate, get in on it. I'm putting you over. And so it's just like the biggest sports book. It's very well set up. A lot of individual chairs to sit up by, I believe, the world's largest indoor LED screen. And yeah, it's just a really nice setup. So I did one sports bet on that because if you're running around Vegas partying and stuff, it's tough because you have to wait for the game to be over and then go get the ticket in. So for sports, it's you have to plan ahead a little bit, and we were running around a lot. So that's the only sports bet I did. But thank you, Astros, for like $100.
Nice. Were future bets not available at this time for like betting on the Cubs for next year if you wanted to?
Yeah, I asked, and there was nothing available for that, which is too bad. At least I don't even think I asked at Westgate. I think I asked at one of the other ones, maybe the Mirage. I don't know. I was drunk the whole time, but wherever I asked.
What a perfect name for a place for.
Yes.
What a perfect representation of what we thought the Cubs were, but turned out not to be this year.
Real Mirage, a real white tiger of a situation.
Check out Mirage the musical.
Yeah.
Now play with the Royals.
Yeah, I'll get bumped from that. Yeah.
People don't forget.
No, nope, they don't. We'll never forget getting bumped. Yeah. All right. So should we talk some Cub specific stuff?
Yeah, tell us why Gabe Kapler is the person the Cubs should hire for Cubs manager.
I will.
Or Dave Roberts. Hey,
yeah,
why not?
Yeah, sure. Hey, anyone, any problematic former Dodger employee. Dave Roberts isn't problematic except for just bullpen management at the end there. Dave Roberts seems fine overall. Gabe Kapler, yeah, to me, so he worked in the Dodgers front office. Which is never a bad thing. It's a good front office. Andrew Friedman is, one of the best going, obviously, and Farhan Zaidi was there as well. I think he's the one who hired Kapler, and Zaidi now runs the Giants. So, sort of a surprise that after Kapler was let go after 2 seasons in Philadelphia, we learned that Theo and the gang are going to be interviewing Kapler, and it seems like the interview is about the manager job. I guess it doesn't necessarily.
Well, I guess is it the Red Sox connection? Because I mean, obviously Kapler was on that 2014.
Right. I mean, I think it's a little bit that, and it's a little bit, I think, specifically coming from the Dodgers front office, and they might just want to pick his brain a little bit about the player development over there. So I could see that happening. Kapler pretty quickly goes to the bottom of my list of I would rather hire Girardi than Kapler. Kapler seems to be if not bad, terribly confusing communicator.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very distinct, specific personality. In a way, you could say the same thing about Joe Madden, but Joe Madden a much more chilled out version. And it's almost too long to get into right now, but there's a really like gross situation that Kapler had when he was with the Dodgers with Terry Francona's son, where that led to Francona's son bringing some sort of motion. I forget if it was, I don't remember if it was exactly that he sued him or whatever, but he filed a complaint at least about being discriminated against, and he was a veteran, so it had something to do with him being a veteran as well and having some mental health issues, and Kapler was quoted as being someone who did not handle this in a good way at all.
That's bizarre. I had not heard about that.
Yeah, it's like a really complicated thing that I'm not doing a great job of describing, but I know enough so that when I read everything in detail and I came away feeling like Kapler is gross. So I don't want him really in general, but specifically not to manage. I mean, you look at the Philadelphia teams over the past 2 years, and the first year, okay, maybe they were being talked about more than they should. This year, I think it's hard to say they did anything but underachieve. So I don't know why you'd want to bring in, a young manager who oversaw that.
But he's getting looks. I mean, apparently the Giants already talked to him, and then I had read that the Cubs were going to talk to both him and Espada this week. Now, does that mean that Espada is given like the opportunity to fly out to Chicago or something during the ALCS? How does that work?
I mean, sometimes that has happened. Teams have...
You have to like ask for permission, I assume, right?
Yes. Teams have granted permission for things like that. So interviewing on an off day.
It's like it's like the baseball version of The Bachelor where Theo's like, "Can I steal him for a sec?"
Yeah, exactly. Can I just take him aside? I really need a few words. And then Jeffrey Lou now is all pissed off about it. Just like this was important time we had with Espada. I thought he was the one. So I think there's a good chance that can happen. There's a good chance, and the Astros could say no, or Espada could just be like, I need to focus on this right now. And it seems like the Cubs are holding off on making a decision until they talk to him. And I mean, Espada for me is one of my top two choices right now. I think his background is really interesting. He's not an old guy. He's in his 40s. But he came up in the Marlins, like he managed a lot in the Marlins minor league system, and then he worked with the Yankees. He was I heard from a Yankee friend of mine that he was a bad third base coach for the Yankees, but he worked with the Yankees, which is not a bad thing. And then he's been with the Astros these past couple of years, which is very much not a bad thing,
Do you think that like Osmus being fired and Kapler being fired is an attempt for people to just take their shot at Madden? Because I kind of feel like, certainly for the Angels it is, and I'm actually kind of surprised that Madden hasn't like officially signed there yet. And then I had read that, the Phillies he was interested in the Phillies job. Obviously he's got the Hazleton, Pennsylvania ties. Like you kind of wonder if for teams who are on the fence about whether or not to retain their managers, they were like, well, if we're not completely sure that we have the right guy, let's just get rid of him and see if we can make a run at Madden.
Yeah, I think, as you said, Osmus being let go after 1 year, it feels like a Ricky Renteria situation where it's like, I mean, I don't think Trout's, injured at the end of the year. Shohei had his issues too. I mean,
he also had a teammate die in the middle of the year, which I'm sure not help morale.
Right, exactly. So this is not this Angels season. The Angels not making the playoffs is not on Brad Osmus. Whether he did a good job or not, that's not on him. So I think that very clearly seems to be a Madden move, and it seems like the Angels. I also agree. It's a little weird that he hasn't signed yet. You would think they would have made a serious offer already and locked it down. But yeah, the Philadelphia has the Hazleton connection. I think there's a good chance that they're seeing there is a game-changing manager who's a free agent because some other team let him go for some reason. So yeah, I would not at all be surprised about that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see any team that signs him take a bit of a jump next year,
Yeah.
And the Mets with Mickey Callaway too, so yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Girardi seems like a more obvious fit for the Mets because of the whole knowing how to deal with New York media and all that. Apparently, Beltran, I don't know if you saw this, Carlos Beltran, the Cubs wanted to interview him, and I think there's one other team, and he basically said, like, I only want the Mets job.
I didn't see that it was Mets specific, but I did see that he turned down an interview request with the Cubs and I think the Phillies. I think
Might have been Phillies,
it was the Cubs and one other team at least. But I mean, The Mets fans I know have a lot of love for Carlos Beltran. So if he feels that way, I think that's a hiring that Mets fans would and should be excited about.
I think so too. That my closest Mets fan friend was less inclined, only because he was afraid it would, like, if it didn't go well, it could tarnish how people thought of him. And it's the same concern that I have about David Ross. And it's the reason that I'm not as big of a John Paxson fan anymore.
Right. Yeah. I used to be a huge John Paxson fan as a kid who my best sport was basketball growing up. And I am a 6'2" white guy. And my parents went to Notre Dame. John Paxson, I basically saw as the best version of me growing up. I was like, this is maybe that would be the target dream for me.
You were more of a Bobby Hampson.
Yeah, it turns out. Yeah, exactly. I was a little more Hansen-esque. A Judd Bushler, perhaps.
Oh, hell yeah.
But, yeah, see, I agree, and I've heard people say that specifically about David Ross, right? I'm not worried about that. Because I don't think, first of all, I think if Ross isn't good, there's no way he'd hang around as long as Paxson has. Right. And if Paxson was fired after 5 years of sucking, I would still have really good feelings about him. So I'm not really worried about that aspect of it. But I've heard that floated as a concern about Ross and Beltran for sure. For me, Ross and Espada are my two top choices right now. But I feel like there is, I have just a lingering feeling about them interviewing Loretta and Venable, and Loretta and Venable both being guys that the front office specifically brought in, young guys at the front office. They weren't Joe Madden hires, they were front office hires. I feel like there's a lingering chance with those guys too, which wouldn't excite me. And I don't know, maybe they're the best choice, but they.
Well, the one thing I always wonder about that though is when you're doing interviews in house, if those people then don't get that job, is there like a lingering resentment if they just have to choose to keep their old job or not? Like in Venable's case, it's interesting because Loretta presumably, if he doesn't become the manager, would stay the bench coach, and then there's really nowhere that you can promote Venable if he doesn't get hired. You know what I mean?
Right, because bench coach being a promotion from first base coach. Yeah.
Right.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And they're both guys who, it seems like the Cubs like the combination of front office experience and on the bench experience. And Venable and Loretta had front office experience in San Diego, and Venable a little bit with the Cubs before he moved down to first base, I believe. So.
I heard Ron Coomer is interviewing for second base coach. He's just going to stand there in the way.
He's just going to hang out in the middle of the field. Yeah, just right behind the umpire trying to dodge stuff. That sounds like a perfect position for him. You got the rumor mill here on Away Games. Follow us at Away Games Pod. Hear about all the second base coach openings. Yeah, so, we're going to do a full-on deep dive into sort of fantasy booking this offseason late, probably once the actual season has wrapped up and we're into the actual offseason. But, as Adam alluded to before, a couple of fun free agent, really the top 3 free agents, the top 2 for sure, and possibly the top 3 are all still playing right now. And
presumably driving their prices up and up and up and up.
Right. So Strasburg could opt out of. He has 4 years left and $100 million, and it sure seems like he could opt out and get more than that if he wanted to. Sort of in a similar position as Yu Darvish, contract wise, coming out this year. Although we're all kind of assuming that Yu is going to hang out. But yeah, and then Garrett Cole looks like he's just going to break all the records for starting pitcher contracts. He's still not even 30. And then Anthony Rendon, position player wise. What are your thoughts of those 3 guys as a Cubs fan?
Yeah, and not even as high profile, but Howie Kendrick is sure as hell earning himself some extra money this offseason.
Yeah, Howie Kendrick seems to me like what the Cubs thought the Daniel Descalso contract was going to be. Yeah. It's like, Howie Kendrick has more of a track record than Descalso. That would have made more sense, but yeah.
Yeah, my thoughts quickly on them are that as far as the Cubs are concerned, obviously it goes without saying that I think the Cubs could use a really good starting pitcher because you've got Hamill's gone, Lester getting older, and really only Hendricks and Darvish, if he continues to look like second half Darvish, as the mainstays of your rotation who you can rely on.
Yeah.
I don't know that they'll really have enough money, or that the Ricketts will allow them to have enough money to go after Strass or Cole, especially considering what they're doing right now. Rendon we've talked about before, but I think for the Cubs to even go after Rendon, it would involve moving some other pieces, and I'm not big on them moving Bryant if that's part of that conversation.
Right. Basically, in shorthand, if you sign Rendon, he's playing third. He has played second in the past before, but I don't think that's what you'd be signing him to do. You'd be talking about Rendon at third, and if you keep Chris Bryant, then moving Chris Bryant to right field, probably. And that's how you line up your team. But it would also be... See, I also don't want to move Chris Bryant, but if you tell me we're trading Chris Bryant, 2 years of Chris Bryant for 1 year of Mookie Betts, and, that's a lot of value for the 2 years to 1 year. Mookie Betts is better than almost everyone in the world. I'll say Mookie Betts is better than Chris Bryant, but 2 years of Bryant versus 1 year of Betts is a big difference in value.
Yeah.
So if you...
And somehow I doubt something like that is going to happen. It makes decent sense, but I just don't see it happening.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. If I would love signing Rendon, also diversifies the way this team hits, much like Castillo. He's a contact guy, it makes the lineup harder to pitch to. So I would love signing Rendon, but yeah, it would involve a lot of pieces moving around.
Right, and then if you didn't trade Bryant and he's in right field and Schwarber's in left, then you have the same issue that you might run into if you sign Castellanos, and then you have Castellanos in right and Schwarber in left and Hayward in center, and eventually the defensive metrics are going to catch up to you if you're having Hayward start in center.
Yeah.
Which, again, we think maybe a platoon would be better, but,
Yeah, one thing I think to look out for is with these two Nationals driving their prices up, and the Nationals notoriously only offer contracts with extreme backloaded deals, deferred money that really lowers the value of these deals. I think if Strasburg opts out, I don't think they're keeping both guys. So one of those guys, I think, is going to sign with another team because the Nationals have shown that they're not really willing to match the level of contracts in present-day value. Like we all know about the 10-year, $300 million deal they offered Bryce Harper, but with deferred money, the present-day value of that was $186 million. And I looked that up before we started this podcast. And half of Scherzer's money is being paid off later. So,
right.
I think...
Well, and maybe it's a thing where if the Nats just continue this crazy run and win a World Series, then Strasburg is that much more inclined to be like, I did what I was supposed to do here, and I'm going to go get a bunch of money now.
Yeah. And between Cole and Strauss, we're talking about 2 number 1 overall picks who are doing exactly what you draft a number 1 overall pick to do. So it'll be interesting.
Doing slightly better than the number 1 pick who went before Chris Bryant. But the Astros are doing fine.
Yeah. The Astros are doing fine. It's insane to imagine the Astros with Chris Bryant instead of Mark Appel, who led to Ken Giles, who led to who knows what. But yeah. So all right. So that should just about do it for us this week, right?
I think that's that. I think we are proving that we know about more than just the Cubs.
I know. See, we don't. There's so many teams going during the season. We're a Cubs podcast, and that's who we really care about. But you see that we're showing off a little bit of the general knowledge these past couple weeks. So fun. Follow us at awaygamespod on Twitter and Instagram. Again, hit up our friends at Thrive Fantasy. Get free $10 by putting in the promo code awaygames. And that's it. We're heading into the end of the championship series the rest of this week. And next week, I guess we'll be talking about some World Series stuff.
Stay in the fight, baby.
Stay in it. See ya.